Hello Internet people, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. This is the S650 Mustang Tuning 101 series that I'm putting together. This is following up on a couple videos I released previously when we were still in the thick of understanding what this platform was and how it worked as the 4th generation Coyotes, which are different than the previous 3 generations, which all shall be revealed right as we continue. Looking around on forums, I've been on the Mustang 7G forum, various Facebook channels, Discord servers, I'm on the HP Tuners boards, right? Just hunting and finding every little scrap of information I could, a lot of private messaging as well, and also some visits to other, pro tuners, and compiled a lot of information, and now putting this together, if only to organize my own thoughts, hopefully benefits to some of you. So with that, let's get into the material. What are we going to be doing here? So this is going to be the first of several decks, many decks probably. This is just to get our feet wet, come to understand what the material is, how we're going to proceed, a brief introduction, talking about what is tuning, how do I get started, which is a question I see a lot on the boards, and a lot of times it's the salty board veterans will say, you just got to read, you just got to search, right? So this is meant to be a little more proactive, right, and pushing information to you. And this is just sort of getting our feet wet and getting in. So at the end, we'll talk about, too, why are we doing this? There's factors you may not even have considered. So we'll get to that as well. And then, of course, my little friend on the right here, if you do like the material, if you're getting some benefit from it, please like and subscribe. Helps me out. If only to know that there are others out there like me. So, getting into it. Introduction. So, this is intended for folks who are new to tuning. I am assuming that you have zero experience tuning, and that you may not have a lot of experience with cars either, and you may not even have experience with computers, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Those are all skills you need to have if you're going to do this. But if you are new and you are trying to get into this and it has been a cryptic undertaking and either material is too complex or for whatever reason you just can't find it, this is meant for you, okay? It is not meant for salty veterans. It is meant for other tuners who are anxious to just see how this platform works. We'll talk about that. You guys, though, right? I'm not catering to you, right? So the tone, the rhythm, the attention to detail, the lack of deep detail in certain places, that's going to be in different spots, right? And there may even be another series I do that are more for advanced topics, right? But this is for the new guys, okay? Many of the concepts you will learn here will extend to a variety of gasoline engines. Tuning is tuning, right? And you'll see some of that, more of that down the road here. For this course, though, like other guides I've done in the past that focus on a particular vehicle and software, this series is meant very specifically for people with the 4th generation Coyote 5.0 liter engine that is found powering 7th generation, the S650 Ford Mustangs, okay, the V8 Mustangs. The 4th gen Coyotes are also in F-150s. If you are an F-150 guy and you're just here checking it out, you can probably get a lot of stuff here that will apply to the F-150. But I would say for some final, things to think about, things to consider, right, you may want to find some F-150 material. So if you message me, I'm happy to point people places. About me, my name is Colin Beach. I've been a hobbyist tuner since 2008. I started working on cars probably back in 2002. I had an old Volvo 850 that was a strange 5-cylinder monster, and there was a point where it was running really rough, and I went on the internet and found out that I could talk to the computer that was on board the car. This was back in the OBD1 days, and the feedback this thing gave in codes was actually like blinking LED messages. And I managed to decipher the ECU's message, which said, hey, your MAF sensor is fouled. And so I got myself a new MAF sensor, and my car started running great, and I thought, holy shit, there's really something to this idea that computers control cars now. I'm a computer guy first, right? And I was doing extreme PC modding before I ever got into cars. So one kind of thing tends to lead to another, right? From an overclocker to a tuner. But that's how I got started. 2008 though is when I bought a Mazda Speed 3, fantastic car. I still tell people about it to this day. Learned how to tune that car, wrote a guide for those guys back in the day on Mazdaspeed.org, and have since tuned Volkswagen Golf Rs. I had a Boss 302 back in 2013 that I was tuning on. Then let's see. Now I have an electric car. There's something in there. At one point I had a Chevy Camaro 2SS convertible, and that was when I stepped into serious muscle tuning and learning about things like the VVE tables. We'll get into all that. And now here I am learning the S650 platform. Okay, so that's just the journey I'm on. This is going to be introductory material. If you are looking for advanced materials, things that take you further than the ideas in this recording, this lesson, you're going to want to find information in other places. These guys have no idea I'm making these slides, right? I'm not endorsing anybody for gain. This is just, in my experience, when I was looking for good, solid information, these are the places I ended up going to. Evans Performance has great materials. Jeff Evans is gifted at doing really great detail and helping you understand some of the advanced concepts. He's very focused, right? So that's probably where I would send you first. Greg Banish over at Calibrated Success over the years has done a lot of great EFI calibration materials. His books are great. His videos are great. You can check him out. Goat Rope Garage gave me, really helped save me back in the Chevy days, and has been a great resource, and has a lot of great videos that can really show you some of the practical stuff. Then there's the HP Tuners forums themselves, and I have never really interacted with HP Academy, but I hear that they do good stuff as well. So this is just a shout out to those folks. I stand on their shoulders, right, as far as being able to have access to any of this information. So, I'm not a professional tuner. I am a tuning instructor, and I will say that this is all for informational purposes only. You accept all liability for anything you do to your vehicle, right? That's the I didn't mean it, right? The tuner is the one who accepts the risk of doing the tuning, okay? And so that is why, in addition to giving you, the viewer, all liability for whatever you do with your car, right? Part of this method here is that, look, these cars cost a lot of money. Like, every month I'm making this payment on this thing. I'm already questionable, right, about my warranty, given that I'm tuning it. But, that's why I guard my investment well. I love to tune. I will always want to tune. Thank God Ford finally, released the shackles or whatever was holding us back. But safety, reliability, sanity, these are all things that will constantly be expounded on here and extolled as virtues that we want to adopt. That said, be careful, because you can fuck up your car, right? Let's be clear, right? And I'll give you clear warnings when we're venturing into that kind of territory. So just pay attention for that stuff. This information is freely available. There's nothing in here that's secret. There's no copyright violations or intellectual property violations, right? This is all stuff that if you had the time and the inclination, you could go find, right? My exercise here is simply to put it all together and then add some polish in terms of explaining, why we do things. And I show my logs of my car, and if there are other logs I have access to, and they're public domain, I'll show those as well. And we also, we have success and failure go hand in hand, right? They're both born out of the attempt, right? So sometimes failures, and there were many along the way on the S650 as I was trying to figure out this platform, they are instructional as well. And so I don't sugarcoat or gloss over where things have been confusing or didn't work great, right? Because it reinforces what the good stuff is, the stuff that does work. So, you'll see the all warts and all, right? And the whole goal of this whole thing is to convince you that you can tune your car. It is possible. There's a lot of material you're going to want to look at and digest, but if you think there's no way that, I definitely have to pay $1,000 if I want to get a tune for something like an intake, right? You can do this. It really does work, right? I would say anything with full bolt-ons is within grasp of a competent tuner who understands the basics, right? Now, things like, I've changed my fuel pump, or I've changed my injectors, right? Or, I've added a supercharger. Hey, that's a whole other level, right? And you're going to need more than just this tutorial. But we will cover what those things are and what they do to the car and how it all works, right? We'll look at some of that, right? So, but yeah, I wanna create other tuners. So that's part of this, right? All right. So there's the intro. What is tuning? Tuning is calibration at the end of the day. That is the fundamental definition. It's not witchcraft, it's not sorcery, as much as it's fun to think of it as kind of it is a black magic, right? But at the end of the day, we have an engineered system. That engineered system is controlled by signals. Signals and systems is an engineering course that you can take, right? And the feedback and control of these sensors and the various PIDs that are on the car. PIDs are these little magic Okay, so yeah, optimization, calibration. It's an engineered system. The PIDs tell you at any given moment what is happening, and based on that, we can change certain aspects of this system as it is moving. The main components of the system we worry about: airflow, fuel, and spark. There's an old aphorism in, I guess, amongst mechanics that if someone rolls in and the car isn't running right, ultimately, every troubleshooting comes down to one of three things. It's either airflow or fuel or spark, right? It all relates back to those. So you'll see those as the three pillars we stand on in all things going forward here. Okay, there we go. Tuning. We take for granted when we are tuning that the car is fully operational, it's working as it's intended, that there have been no major modifications that haven't been disclosed to the tuner, right? It's a regular working car. And so I'll give you a great example. I was working on a Chevy 2SS and the car was running great. I loved it. It was 2021 convertible. It was that Orange Crush. Lovely car, right? Just loved it. And every time I went to watt, it leaked oil. And we first discovered this when I was doing some basic watt testing. I took it into a mechanic. I was getting a wideband O2 sensor installed. We'll talk all about that in a minute. And found out that the car was leaking oil. So bought it used from a dealership, took it in, yada, yada, yada. 3 times this car went in, ultimately finding out that the positive crankcase ventilation system on these cars is prone to failure. It was cheerfully referred to by several as a pandemic car because it was produced on the line during the pandemic, where apparently, like, I don't want to speak ill of the General, but I've never met a GM car that the quality was there, right? So, and apparently this year was particularly bad. And so tuning is not going to fix an oil leak resulting from your ruptured PCV system, right? If you're going to tune, you have to fix things like that, because otherwise it's going to throw off what? Airflow, fuel, or spark. Okay? So it's not magic. Mechanical issues, you got to iron them out first. Okay? It cannot resolve a physical system that requires repair. That is its own thing, not solved here. However, And this is black magic, right? Tuning can resolve problems related to engine operating parameters, such as airflow, fuel, or spark, when you do classic mods that are power adders, and it throws the flow off, right? So classic example, the cold air intake. I go out, I take out my air boxes, I put a cold air intake on. Now I've got air flowing more freely into the engine. Promises horsepower, right? I mean, some of these fantastical, like 25 horsepower gains, right? You ain't getting shit if you don't go in the ECU and update that computer saying, guess what? There is more air flowing in more quickly, and if you don't account for it, it's gonna be off, right? It's not gonna get us the gains we should get. In the best case, it's gonna screw things up in the worst case, right? So something like long tube headers, that will really throw your airflow off, right? To the point where the car might idle rough or something like that. If you are the kind of person that is putting in new cams and putting on a supercharger or twin turbos, you already know all this, right? I'm preaching to the choir. Anytime we add these big power adder mods, though, they change airflow, fuel, or spark. Or, as a sort of triple constraint, I just outed myself as a project manager. If I change airflow, I have to change fuel as well, because if I change one part of the system of three things that interrelate, the other two will automatically be affected, right? So that's what tuning is. Puts all that together. If we're going to tune a non-electronic fuel injected vehicle, like in the past, right? You know, Grandpa's old favorite car that he brought in from the barn. These cars that run on carburetors have needles and jets, and they take advantage of something called the Venturi effect and how fluid dynamics works, right? And that is how those magical devices get the fueling right. And, you know, the classic experience with these cars is winter comes, you have to do a tune for the cold weather, right? When spring comes, we can relax it again, right? And when hot summer comes, we have to make another adjustment, right? Electronic fuel injection cars do not have to do that. These are by far and away the more common car. The S650, of course, is electronic fuel injected. It's particularly magical because not only is it EFI, but it's got port injection and, direct injection, how we love you, right? Direct injection, where the fuel is misted directly into the cylinder, makes so much power possible, right? Because it keeps things cool. We're going to talk all about that. Okay, these EFI vehicles are controlled by a computer. The computer runs the injectors and other parameters. The computer itself is a physical device that sits in the car. It kind of looks like a hard drive, wrapped in some, like a shell, basically. And you can access that computer through the OBD2 port, which is like your car's USB port, essentially. You get the MPVI3 device, talk about that in a sec. You plug that in, connect it to a laptop via USB cable, and the laptop can put new software on the computer in the car. That is how we do it nowadays, and that is what we're going to be looking at for the rest of our time here. We're going to be looking at the HP Tuner software and device. The device itself is called the MPVI3. If you have an MPVI2, I believe it will work for this course. I'm teaching to an MPVI3 though, so just be aware that that is something that's happening, right? And then the software, there's the VCM scanner and there's the editor, right? And we'll talk more and more about what those are. You can find all this at hptuners.com. Check them out. How do I learn to tune? Okay, so when you're new to tuning, I will give you this spoiler. There's two major lanes of tuning knowledge. One is tuning theory. That's the understanding of the principles of internal combustion, their components, the functioning, right, how engines work. All engines that are internal combustion engines have cylinders, they have crankshafts, they have pistons, they have ports, right? And They all take air in along with fuel. There's a spark event. They blow the air out, right? These principles are held in common across all engines, right? And there's physics, there's chemistry, there's thermodynamics. It's just some basic principles you will want to learn to truly understand these. And this is where I'm good at breaking this stuff down. If you are not technical, if you don't care for math, if you don't care for science, if you're just here for how do I do it, we're going to give that to you, right? But some of this theory is fundamental. You're going to need to learn it because you want to understand why we do the things we're going to do. The reason being, when you're lost in the software, and that's the second thing, the praxis. The software is what is the vehicle for you exerting your will on the car, because the software lets you change the factors you want to change. How do I know what I want to change and how to do it? Because I know the theory, right? And it's both of these things that we want to teach in the course. A lot of places that I come across, these other tutorials, YouTube videos, a lot of fantastic material, right? Often they tend to focus on one thing versus the other. It's either all theory, and from here you can go into the software and make your adjustments. Have a good day, folks. Right? Or it's okay. Go to table 4. Go down to field 4. Select the drop down. Go with the third choice. Click that. Hit apply. Save, and then apply. Okay, and you're good to go. What did I just do? I have no idea. Right? So you want to have both, ideally. And if you truly understand these concepts, you will be able to explain either one of these if someone asks you a question. Right? We'll see if I live up to that premise. If you want to really learn to tune, it's going to be an iterative process. You're going to move from one concept to another. You're going to want to just get familiar with the ideas first. You're going to want to go through topics multiple times. I have to force myself sometimes to let a set of materials just go by, and I absorb it a little bit, and then I come by on a second pass and I get a little bit more, right? And ultimately, doing it is what will give you mastery, right? So you will find this is not something, you're not going to learn this in a day. You're not going to learn this in a weekend. You could maybe learn it, and if you're brand new, you could probably learn enough to be dangerous in 3 months. And that's with working at it every day, right? Especially because as you tune one car, picking up other cars becomes easier. It's kind of like languages. If you learn one foreign language and you get it, you understand there's different syntaxes and vocabularies, the idea of a third one is less daunting, right? And tuning is the same here as well. The thing about tuning, though, is ultimately it has to be causal. What you learn needs to be made manifest in logs. If it's not something you can demonstrate and repeat in data logs, it's not something that's actually working, and it's not something you fully understand. Logs is the gold standard. Nothing else suffices. It's the receipts. Okay, you either have them or you don't. And I liken this to kind of learning a musical instrument. Learning an instrument takes time. If you're learning guitar, piano, saxophone, whatever, the first 6 months is pretty painful. The next 6 months, kind of exciting. For you, for the people listening to you, it's torture, right? Then the second year, hey, you're kind of getting it, right? And then the third year, it's like, hey, can you please play at the family Christmas? We really want you to play. It's not that you're a master pianist or you're going to be playing Carnegie Hall anytime soon, right? But other people now see that you have a competency that distinguishes itself from the rest of the crowd. It can and will happen here with persistence. So, enough rah-rah. What do I need to do this? This is all vital. You got to have this. We're focusing on S650 Mustangs. If it's not an S650 Mustang, it's not what we're talking about, right? In terms of the praxis, the theory, you can take that all day long. This course will focus on manual transmission cars. I make no apology. I've been driving manual since I was 16. I truly believe, for me, you're either driving an electric car with massive torque that is just giving you like mind-bending acceleration from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or less. It's either that, or if it's gasoline powered, it has 3 pedals. That's my personal view. Now, those cars that are in between, I don't care about them. I don't want to know about them, right? And that's because I am a prick because I drive a manual car and I have an inflated ego because of it, right? As most manual guys do. We are not going to look at something very important, automatic transmission shifting points. If you do have an automatic, this guide will take you far. You will have to find other material, though, on automatic shift points. If you make your way through the course, by the time you get to the end, you will be armed and dangerous to go to pretty much any forum, the HP Tuners forum or the 7G, right? Someone there will have plenty of materials on shifting, right? Or some of the other resources I mentioned. Calling it out because it is what it is. It's just never. It's not something I've ever needed to do. I don't know how to do it because I don't drive a slush box. An HP Tuner's MPVI 2 or greater, MPVI 3 is preferred. You're going to have to pick one of those up. Last I checked, it costs $300 for, I call it my hockey puck, that I connect to the OBD2 port and then run the cable to my computer. If you go to HP Tuners and get your MPVI 3 hockey puck, you can also spend 4 credits. I went with the universals. I guess if you buy Ford, you'd probably be okay. I would buy universals. An S650 Mustang requires 4 of these $50 credits, so you're looking at $200 for the license. So that's about $500 for all the stuff. When you start flashing the map to your car, when you marry your car to this device and the files that are going back and forth, the license is for the lifetime of the car. It stays with the car. If you sell the car, the next person who wants to tune it will need to buy their own license, right? And that's just how that works, right? That's all HP Tuners policy. They made it, you bought it, that's how that works. And then finally, a laptop computer that can run VCM Scanner and Editor. I think Macs can run it. I don't know. I use Windows. I basically just went out and got a cheap Windows 11 laptop. VCM Scanner and VCM Editor, they're not, you're not mining bitcoins or running AIs with these things, right? They're just software. It's pretty much any laptop can do. You're not going to need like a $2,000 laptop. Probably something, the El Cheapo on Amazon, $300, $500 if you don't have one already. You will need one though, because the logging and the editing has to happen. Okay. Optional items. If you don't have Microsoft Excel or some other spreadsheet software, you might want it because there are a couple things we do that give us the chance to analyze some of our data or make other tools. It's a handy thing. Another thing you want to consider possibly is on Amazon, there's something called an ELM 327 adapter, which is just like the HP Tuners hockey puck, but it's a cheaper version that's just a very basic OBD2 interface. And with it, though, you can run something called ForScan, or literally Ford Scanner, and that lets you change codes. I had to use ForScan, for example, to turn off active noise cancellation when I hooked up two JL12s in the back with the signal source coming from the rear speakers. Those rear speakers were being used by the system to do active noise canceling. The sub, though, the amp, all crazy, right? So I had to turn it off. ForScan is good at that. You can reprogram your tire size, right, and the revolutions that form the speed, speedometer calculation with ForScan. Now we can do that in HP Tuners as well. It's probably better, but ForScan can do a couple weird things that you might be interested in as a curiosity. I just mentioned it. Now, finally, last thing, and I know I go on and on. I apologize, former teacher. Why tune? Well, for one thing, necessity, right? There are times where the vehicle simply isn't running right. Let's say you bought a car and, the idle is rough. It's doing something called hunting, where it keeps bouncing around between 600 and 800 RPM and never quite settles. That is a chance where, you can check out the car. If everything seems physically okay, that's where using tuning software can help you solve a little bit of a problem there. A problem related to air, fuel, or spark. Sometimes you have to tune, right, to get something working right. Another reason, factory conservativeness. So the cars that are sold to the general public, the companies that make them understand that the general public is the lowest common denominator of intelligence and practical behavior. I'm not trying to be mean, just that, right, the great crowd is going to be using their products, and so they have to design them with the uninformed maintenance mastermind as top of mind, right? It has to be conservative. There are times where people are going to run cheap, shitty gas. There are times people are going to not change their oil for 20,000 miles. It happens. It is what it is. And so the factories will give you a tune that is very conservative, right? That leaves a lot of power on the table. They will give you a car that has fuel trims that are off as much as 10-15%. Talk about what that means. And you can do better, right? Where their engineers left off, you can pick up and finish that last 10%. That 10% being the difference between running okay and perfection, ultimately, right? Never achieved, but the quest is what drives us, right? So that's part of why we do this. There's an idea of jailbreaking, right? Like, why would I jailbreak my Android phone? Well, there's so many, I don't want to call them naughty apps, but there's certain things that Verizon doesn't want me doing with their Verizon locked phone, and if I unlock it, I can run weird little programs that I want to run. It's the same kind of idea here, where if you take control of the car system, you can run E85. Does Ford want you running E85? No, they didn't sell you a car that's supposed to run E85, but you can turn that on with tuning, right? So that's part of what we do, because we want control over the thing that we bought, right? You may have a Frankenstein. Frankenstein being a car that has all sorts of parts from various places, and tuning is the thing that will let you ultimately turn that system on and run it. It's not really something we're going to cover here. It's really more for more advanced topics, specifically if you're doing something like an engine swap, right? We're not going to really cover that here, just reasons why you would need to tune, right? If you are bringing an engine into a new vehicle for a true hot rodding project, you will need software to run that car and interface with all its different systems, right? So that's another reason. I'm a big believer in right to repair. I'm a big believer in originally things like Electronic Frontier Foundation and the whole right to repair movement in IT. If you're familiar with it, it's coders should know how their code works. I'm a big believer in understanding these tools that we use, right? And when things go wrong, I'm not utterly beholden to the company that made it or the other companies offering services, right? If I have the gumption and the wherewithal, I like to be able to fix a lot of my own stuff. I'm a DIY guy at heart, right? So just in terms of understanding these movements and the role of intellectual property versus the right to repair and all that, right? It's a reason why tuning empowers the consumer, right? I'll leave it at that. You can check that out on your own more if you're interested. Finally, I think this is the last one, craftsmanship, right? Just craftsmanship is fun, right? And when you really invest your time in something and understand it and get really good at it, and the end product is something that is really, really excellent, right? The feeling of satisfaction is off the chart, right? So I do this for that. It's I do woodworking and various other things. This is one of my little projects, right? That's my call to craftsmanship. And finally, that's right. The other thing, there's a community. Tuning is a community. The forums and places where tuners congregate are great places to be. Meets are great places to be. It is fun to interact with those folks. If you learn tuning, you're learning the language of cars, right? And so that will distinguish you from other people who are not part of this secret world, right? There's muggles who don't know how to change their own oil, and there's car guys who know this stuff, right? And so it gives you a chance to enter that world. And there is a pretty rich community that I like interacting with. Community that also loves to fucking bicker, but hey, that's family, right? Okay, from here, things we're gonna do. Like I said, oops, the cat did something naughty. All right, from here, there's going to be a variety of other decks, and this is not the last of them, right? This is just the next 6, teeing this up for down the road. Next time, we're going to start looking at basic internal combustion concepts. This is for people who've never studied this stuff. If you are familiar, you can move on, right? Just like with the 4-stroke cycle. That is the basic fundamental mechanism of the internal combustion engine. If you're already very familiar with the 4-stroke, you don't need to look at that. If you're interested, though, we're gonna talk about it. Same with camshafts and forced induction, right? Those 3 things, I think, are things that it's just theory you cannot do without. From there, we're going to look at mass airflow modeling and how that affects fueling and fuel trims. We're going to look at MAF calibration and things like that. Then we're going to go over speed density and what that is, and again, how it affects fueling and fuel trims. We're going to go over that. Those 2 in particular, we're going to talk about in relation to the S650, because the S650 does things very differently than the previous 3 generations. If you've seen my other videos, you are well aware of that. We'll talk about it more. We're also going to talk about open and closed loop, what it is, what it does, how we deal with it, why we don't necessarily need a wideband sensor that we, in addition to the widebands that come with the car, right? And also, again, how Gen 4 does something very different than the gens previous to it. So that's what's coming. There will be other topics besides. Again, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and happy tuning.